When the US left Afghanistan, it was believed that it will be able to focus on the more critical challenges, especially China in the Indo-Pacific. But since Russia initiated the so-called Special Military Operation, the US got involved indirectly. In total, the United States has committed more than $36.1 billion in security assistance to Ukraine since the beginning of the Biden administration. The United States has, by far, provided the most in military aid, which includes anti-tank missiles like Javelin, artillery system like M777, HIMARS multiple rocket launchers, kamikaze drones like Switchblade, radars, Harpoon Anti Ship Missile, and NASAMS air defense systems, to name some. Several of these have come from U.S. military stockpiles, potentially depleting them to a significant extent. Noting all this, many experts have questioned the ability of the United States to manage a second conflict. But Indo-PACOM Commander Admiral John Aquilino has provided a different perspective. In this video, Defense Updates analyzes why the Indo-PACOM Commander feels the U.S. can manage conflicts in Ukraine and Taiwan simultaneously. Let's get started. In a recent Senate Armed Services Committee hearing, Indo-PACOM Commander Admiral John Aquilino was asked whether he believed U.S. support for Ukraine was hurting his effort to deter China. "I do not," Aquilino said. "The United States is the only global force capable of managing multiple threats. I haven't been impacted at this point as it applies to my deterrence mission, so I do believe we can do both. For example," he said, "the U.S. donation of munitions to Ukraine, such as guided multiple launch rocket system rounds and 155mm howitzer shells, isn't hurting his stockpiles." He said, "The fight that's ongoing between the Ukrainians and the Russians, the munitions that we are providing to Ukraine at this time are not degrading capabilities that are necessary for the fight that might occur in Taiwan." The general has indicated that tactically, the requirements for the two conflicts are different, and there's no immediate issue with stockpiles. If conflict breaks out because of China attempting to take over Taiwan, it will primarily be a naval battle, unlike the one going on in Ukraine, which is a land war. Another aspect is the U.S. officially has no boots on the ground in Ukraine, and only a few special operatives could be engaged. So there's no manpower constraint if the U.S. has to intervene from Taiwan's side. There's also a school of thought which is of the view that most of the weapons transferred by the U.S. to Ukraine are from the 1980s and were tagged for decommissioning in 2010 to 2020. These are not considered by the U.S. military as part of the actual active inventory. It does not imply that Indo-PACOM possesses everything it requires. Apart from the $9.1 billion requested by the Pentagon from lawmakers for the command, there's also a list of unfunded priorities totaling $3.5 billion that were not included in this year's Pentagon budget proposal. At the forefront of Aquilino's requirements is the acquisition of additional precision long-range missiles, which can be utilized by all branches of the military. Examples of these missiles include Tomahawk land attack missiles, as well as funding for the Army's Precision Strike Missile Increment 2. He said, "Those are the capabilities that the Army's Multi-Domain Task Force and Marine Littoral Regiment forces need for their missions." During the discussion, Senator Joni Ernst, Republican from Iowa, highlighted that China currently possesses over 1,250 ground-launched ballistic and cruise missiles with ranges of up to 5,500 kilometers. She then inquired, how many ground-launched missiles of that range does the United States currently have? Aquilino responded, "None that I am aware of at this time." But he also emphasized the need for EC-37B electronic warfare jets, as well as a new secure communication system for U.S. partners and allies in the region. Significant funding will also be required to ramp up the U.S. presence in the Indo-Pacific. Recently, the Philippines and the United States took steps to expand the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA. On February 2nd, the longtime allies announced that rotating batches of American forces will be granted access to 4 more Philippine military camps. Another aspect is, unlike Ukraine, Taiwan is better equipped. For example, the Taiwanese Air Force will have about 200 F-16V fighters by 2026. Taiwan will receive 66 new American-made F-16V fighter jets in the coming few years. Also, Taiwan is upgrading its fleet of older variants of F-16 to V standard locally as part of the Phoenix Rising program. Taiwan has developed indigenous facilities that can be used to conduct maintenance and repairs. This will eliminate the need to send the fighters to the United States for upgrades and repairs. It plans to upgrade 141 fighters to the newer version by this year itself. Admiral John Aquilino stated, "Taiwan has U.S. approval to buy $19 billion in arms from U.S. companies, but deliveries are coming slowly." He added, "I can't tell you which specific ones are backlogged in an unclassified setting, but if you think about anti-aircraft capability, you'll think about anti-ship capability in a variety of forms. Whether they be missiles, mines, those capabilities would be critical." Secondly, unlike in Ukraine, where Russia just needed to cross a land border to launch the invasion, China will have to move its troops through the Taiwan Strait, which is 100 miles or 160 kilometers wide. The strait could be killing fields for Chinese warships, and high-value targets could be sunk by relatively inexpensive anti-ship missiles like Harpoon supplied by the U.S. The fact remains, the U.S. had a defense budget of $800 billion, whereas China had $293 billion, and Russia had $65.9 billion in 2022-23. Over the years, there have been this kind of difference in spending, which has enabled the U.S. to build a robust inventory and supply chain compared to Russia and China. The American military-industrial complex is massive, which, if required, can ramp up the production of military equipment several times during wartime. While in an ideal setting, the U.S. would not like to have multiple fronts, but if it faces such a situation, the military-industrial complex is likely to be able to manage them concurrently. Though nothing can be perfectly predicted in complex scenarios, evidence point to the fact that Admiral John Aquilino is very much correct in this assessment regarding the ability to handle 2 different wars.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the like button if you find the video interesting, and kindly provide your feedback in the comment section. This will help us improve.